Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy. We are back with our review on Loki. We were very fortunate enough to get an early screener for this thing, the first 2 episodes. So we feel very spoiled about this. But this isn't going to be a spoiler-filled review. This is going to be completely spoiler-free. We're not really at liberty to talk about much at this point, so it is going to be very vague, but we are going to give our initial opinions on it and what we think and where we think it's going to head. But we will still have spoiler-filled discussions every Wednesday. So this is pre-recorded as of now, but when you guys are seeing this, we will be going live tomorrow for our spoiler in-depth discussion on this episode. And then we're going to have to wait a whole week until episode 2 comes out, so you guys can catch up with that. But yeah, I was going to say it's good to have Marvel back, but in many ways it never really went away, did it? We've had it does feel mad though that this is the 3rd Disney Plus TV show of Marvel that we've had. I still remember, I don't know if it was last year when these first got all announced, and we were like, oh, we're going to have, it's going to take up like halfway into 2021, and we're already in June. It's mad, and we're at the 3rd one of these things. So yeah, I guess that'll do it for the intro. Before we get into this thing, though, just over to George with the socials, and then we'll be not so much diving deep into this thing, but we'll be talking a little bit about it.
Absolutely, guys. We want you to comment. Obviously, you probably haven't seen this, so let us know your thoughts on Loki, the character, and your thoughts on the premise, or your thoughts on the series. Is this something you really wanted? Is this something you didn't want? Obviously, I'm going to say what your thoughts on Hiddleston. He is Loki. Definitively, we'll get into that later on. And yeah, there's not too much we can say, being truthfully honest. However, what we also can say is that we're not obviously just talking Marvel anymore. We did the whole Infinity Saga retrospective, which we love doing. But we're on another retrospective now. We're doing the James Bond films. So come back in a couple of hours' time if you're watching this at 5 o'clock, because we'll be live with our Live and Let Die review, which I'm very excited to get the Bond plug in there. But yes, we're very much had a Marvel year. We have to keep updating the intro because they keep dropping new posters. By the time this series finishes, there'll probably be a Spider-Man poster to put in there, and we will make sure that Tobey Maguire's face is front and center. That being said, the best place to find out about our videos is, of course, getting us on socials, which is Facebook at Cinema Savvy, Twitter at cinema_savvy, letterboxd.com, and of course, we have a link to TeePublic in that description below. And as Chris said, we've got spoiler discussions coming. They're going to be starting from tomorrow. We're going to do as we have done for WandaVision, for Falcon Winter Soldier, a deep dive, a discussion with you guys at home. I think I'm going to jump in and say this is going to be one with theories. This isn't going to be, I think, your bog standard drama. I think certainly initial opinion to do the plug below, this is going to head more in that WandaVision tone. So I'm very excited for you guys to be able to watch this. But no, let's get into this series. And I think the best way to start with that is sort of asking if your thoughts going in off the marketing, and I guess you could say off the concept of Loki getting his own show, brackets considering what happened at the end of Infinity War and Endgame.
Yeah, so I will go into the premise in just a second, but my initial thoughts on this, I think probably out of the 3, this was one that I was like least looking forward to. It was like, well, of course I'm going to watch it out of obligation now. I've seen all the MCU films. I've seen all the TV shows so far, all the Disney Plus ones anyway. And we know very much they are tying into the films, or they will be tying into the films. They're setting up a lot of big stuff. I mean, Falcon and Winter Soldier was massive with, the mantle of Captain America being passed now to Anthony Mackie's character. So didn't know what to expect from this one. A few trailers came out, and I think me and you were more or less on the same page. When we saw trailers, we thought this is just going to be Doctor Who with Tom Hiddleston, with Loki character. It's just going to be him jetting through space, different time periods and everything, wacky misadventures, because everyone loves Loki, right? It's a household name. Like, everyone loves Loki. They could have even named the show that, Everyone Loves Loki, and it was just going to be that and nothing more than that. I thought because people love the character, it was just going to be, we can't kill him off. You can't kill Loki off. I still do kind of feel a bit raw about that. And when they first announced that a Loki TV show was happening, I thought, why? The character's done. Just let it be. Just let it be. He's done. He served his purpose. But obviously we know how his storyline sort of was tied up, or really wasn't tied up, sort of like left open-ended in Endgame, and here we are with the Loki TV series. Before we go into like our opinions properly, I do want to say that my fears have been completely allayed. I'm very much on board with this series, and it's a lot different from what I expected, especially from the trailers.
No, definitely. I'm the same with you, that I loved his character arc, and obviously now rewatching them all as a whole, getting up to the Infinity War, the redemption, and what you got in the in Ragnarok and inside of Infinity War, and you got that Endgame scene, and when he got the cube, I was like, oh, and I was like, okay, Okay, Loki series. I love Loki, but I'm one of those people where I don't like seeing him too much. That he was so predictable because he was so unpredictable. And that's obviously a trait that they've sort of mocked a lot over the years, and this show also does a lot of that, which is great. But yeah, the opening sort of 20, 30 minutes of this show just had me caught like, okay, I mean, this isn't what I thought. This isn't Doctor Who with Tom Hiddleston playing the 12th Doctor or whatever number they're up to now. That was my biggest fear. We aren't getting that, thank God. And I'm in after the first episodes. As you exact same as you, those fears are gone. You know, when it obviously we're not going to spoil anything for anyone. You have to do not worry at all about that. But certainly story wise, I know you've got the premise, but I'm going to say that I'm in on the concept, and I think that's the big draw for this show is that this is going to be very much once you're on board, you're going to stay on board, you're going to stick with it. But I think this could be one where it might take people a couple of episodes to get into.
Yeah, absolutely. So the premise for this thing, for anyone who doesn't know, this is according to Wikipedia. It's a little bit wordy. I'm going to try and cut it down. After stealing the Tesseract during the events of Avengers Endgame, an alternate version of Loki is brought to the mysterious Time Variance Authority, or TVA, a bureaucratic organization that exists outside of time and space and monitors the timeline. They give Loki a choice: face being erased from existence due to being a time variant, or help fix the timeline and stop a greater threat. One of the things that I love about this series so far, and I do agree with that, I think especially episode 1, we'll be talking about episode 2 briefly after this one, but 1's going to be the one that everyone gets to see this Wednesday. It's a lot of explaining, it's a lot of exposition, and, you know, it's a brand new environment, kind of like brand new laws of reality and time and everything that goes along with it. So there is an element of explanation that needs to be in the show just to kind of get your head around some of the rules. And I'm not going to lie, after watching both episodes today, I still need to get my head around some of the time rules and everything. So I do think that I'm going to have to go through another viewing of this, especially before our in-depth review, so I actually sound knowledgeable of what I'm talking about. But what I love about it so far, and this is going to be as vague as anything because I can't go into spoilers, there's so much lore being built up with this one. And, you know, we're talking about that these shows are going to lead into the movies. I was having a look who wrote this thing. And actually, I don't know if it's the director. I don't think it's the director specifically of this episode, but maybe like an idea created by Michael Waldron, who is the co-writer on Doctor Strange Into the Multiverse of Madness. So that's all I'm going to say because I can't go into spoilers, but that makes a lot of sense based on the kind of lore and history that they're going into with this thing, which could have massive ramifications for the future of the MCU.
Yeah, and I mean, we're pre-recording this, obviously, guys, not live, and Kevin Feige did do an interview today saying that this is going to affect the films, and they say that every time that this one's going to impact it, but certainly the feeling I have off these first episodes that this is, we said this about WandaVision, didn't we? Like, this is the show that's going to cause everything to change.
Yeah.
I may have said that too soon. I think maybe this is the show that's going to cause things to change. I could be proven wrong. I don't actually have the answer for that, but this one certainly feels, I don't even want to say the most ballsiest one because they all have been in their own right. And I think a really big takeaway for me is that I'm 3, not seasons in, 3 shows in, 3 new Marvel shows in the last, 5 months? When did one of them start? January time? And I'm sitting here feeling like I'm not bored of it. And I know that sounds horrible, but I've watched 23 Marvel films this year. I've watched 3 Marvel shows and loads of other stuff. And it keeps doing stuff. And before we hit record, I was kind of saying to you that obviously we don't know the order of how they're going to release, you know, Hawkeye, She-Hulk, and Miss Marvel. But starting with WandaVision, you know, very much that ambiguous intrigue, bizarre comedy. Then you get the solid drama in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now we're going back to this insane, ambiguous, world-building monstrosity. And I'm really down for this. I think if you'd had 2 of them in a row, it might have been a bit weird or something too similar. And I think there'll be a lot of WandaVision comparisons, but I am so in on this. And I think a big reason why is obviously Tom Hiddleston. That you mentioned sort of episode 1 feels very exhibition. It felt like a pilot. It didn't feel like this. Like, I know that straight away, Falcon and the Winter Soldier didn't have a pilot. That was a series order. They would have wrote that and said, we want this series before he gets the film. Whereas Loki feels like the really ballsy one. This feels like, is this going to work? And it feels like episode 1 is very much exhibition, and it does need it. there's so much to take in, which is a really good thing. As you said, it's the lore building. There's so much more to learn, and for you Marvel fans as well, it's going to be a dream. You're going to get all this insight and knowledge. You're going to start piecing puzzles, and you're going to have your Mephisto theories because, you know, why not? Mephisto is with us. I think Mephisto is going to be the meme for the next sort of 5 years of Marvel content. And that's what I'm loving about it. And then episode 2 is very much, we've had the exposition dump. Now we're going to get to see more of the world, see more of this. And I think it's such a genius start to the show. And I'm just sat here saying, I want the next one. And I've got to wait 2 weeks for the next episode now. For us to obviously, you know, we are very fortunate that we got to watch it. But it's kind of like when you're hooked and you got to watch 2 episodes back to back. And it's like, phew, hold fire. So sort of as an initial instinct, obviously that works. And I think the big thing is the 2 leads. Obviously, Tom Hiddleston, nothing more needs to be added. He is the definitive Loki. We've always said, we said it, I think, was it the first Thor me and you both did, where I kind of said that to me, he's a Robert Downey Jr. now.
Yeah.
If you were to take the 4 or 5 best MCU characters, I think him and Downey Jr. are on their own level, where I can only see him. No one could even try and do it because it's so clearly Tom Hiddleston being Loki, that he is Loki. And I know a lot of characters can have that description, but if they were to recast Loki tomorrow, that would just cause chaos. Whereas you could get away with recasting a couple of other Marvel characters as they've done already. But Tom Hiddleston is superb, but that is down to Owen Wilson being to me, the star man, the man that's, you know, there's only so much Loki you can take. Loki is a lead character, but you need someone with Loki to get the best out of him. And Owen Wilson, I've not seen any of his Wes Anderson films. So I've only really seen him in the I've only really seen him in the comedy stuff. So it's like, you know, I was expecting like him to be like a wow or any of that kind of thing, but no, like and I love Owen Wilson, and I was kind of there. Like, I'm down. Like I want to see more of him, and it's not what I expected. It's not who I expected to be in a Marvel series, and I think those two together, they've just got some natural flair, which is really helping.
Yeah, I think hands down for me, the star of this show so far isn't Loki himself, isn't Tom Hiddleston. It's Owen Wilson easily. He gets the best lines, his delivery. I think it's down to the fact that it's a very different side of Owen Wilson that I haven't seen before. Not that he's playing it completely serious, but it is that kind of like Wedding Crashers thing, isn't it? Or the various comedy films that he did. And he always kind of played the same kind of character. He was always like the other boyfriend character or something like that would stir the pot. And I probably, because I haven't seen him physically in a film for years. Obviously he's done lended his voice for the role of Lightning McQueen, but outside of that I haven't seen him in a film for so long, so it was great seeing him this. And he is brilliant, and he does have that really good chemistry with Tom Hiddleston. It's kind of like a mix of two things, really. On the one hand, it is like your classic kind of, I always say like buddy cop, but like the odd couple kind of pairing with these two. You kind of had elements of that in Falcon and Winter Soldier, but they kind of flitted in and out of it a little bit, really. It's kind of a mix of that, and also, without going into the premise too much, it's a little bit like Silence of the Lambs as well. How you have Clarice Starling, who has to seek the help of a psychopath to track down another psychopath. Whereas in this one, you know, Owen Wilson has to enlist the help of the god of mischief in order to track down someone he needs like his mind. He needs Loki's mind to help anticipate the moves of this new threat that they've got to stop. And I thought that's quite a really interesting angle with the two, really. So far, I will say 2 episodes in. I don't know if it's the writing, but the jokes aren't really landing for me with Loki as much. I don't know if that's down to sort of like my own personal Loki fatigue. He's not bad, but it's just that the writing isn't as strong as it is for Owen Wilson's character at the moment. And as I say, we're a third of the way through this show at the moment as of this recording with the 2 early screeners that we got for it. So it could all change and it could all develop. But I don't know. I don't know if it's down to the writing or the fact that Loki's character feels like it's changing. And I guess you kind of need to do that as well when you have a villain character as a lead. You know, you see this with Joker, and I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard they pretty much do the same with the new Cruella film that comes out. When you are having a film based on a villain, you kind of have to make them an anti-hero because they do have to kind of serve as that protagonist role as well. And I think we're seeing sides to that too. Without going into spoilers, there are lots of references to previous MCU movies, which you might even see clips for. And in those moments, I was getting emotional beats that I wish I'd have had in those films that the clips are being shown from. George, you probably know which of those Marvel films I'm talking about in particular. And we're getting that emotion from it in hindsight now, which is probably one of my favorite scenes of the character, which is as vague as I can make it, I think.
No, that's absolutely fair. I think that's a really interesting point that we do need to say as well. This, obviously I'm sure you're aware, but this is 2012 Loki. This is after Endgame Loki. This isn't Loki who's, died to Thanos and come back to life. This is, he has been captured by the Avengers and we've followed him on that journey. We know exactly what's happening. Well, we don't know what's happening next, but we are seeing what happens to this alternate timeline Loki, and I think that's what the fascinating dynamic is seeing how the previous films have had an impact. And the only comment I can possibly make is that this is, as Endgame did, a film trying to make Thor: The Dark World more relevant. And I we did a video on Thor: The Dark World earlier this year, and I went in saying Endgame gave this a second life. And unfortunately, it still didn't help it. But
I think if Marvel had have known how much everything was going to hang on that film, they would have made it a darn sight better, I think, in hindsight. But yeah,
exactly. Check out our video on that catastrophic errors on Marvel's behalf of the whole Patty Jenkins stuff. But oh god, I don't know what to do next. I'm so scared I'm going to say something. Let's like politely. Not necessarily wrap up, but let's sort of say final thoughts on first episodes. For those guys at home, we're selling it to you. Obviously, we don't really need to. You've all got your Disney Plus subscriptions. The hashtag Gina Carano crowd didn't have an impact across 100 million subscribers. What I will say is that go and see this on Wednesday morning. Obviously, it's morning for us, midnight America, evening Australia, whatnot. This is going to get spoiled. This is going to be all over Twitter. Big scenes in the first episode. This is going to be a show that everybody is talking about. So go into it as blind as you can on social medias and just sit back and enjoy it. I think this is one of those shows that's going to get, as we said, that weekly intrigue. It's going to have people talking. It's going to have you getting excited. It's going to leave you questions. And I think that's everything you want from a premise from a show. We speak so much about the Netflix binging method. Obviously, it's not a Disney Plus method watching it weekly, but we are seeing the tide return to content being weekly, episodes being aired weekly, and I think Loki is another show that is going to absolutely benefit from that. And I think the more we're getting of Disney Plus, as a side note, the more it's making Netflix look pathetic. I'm just going to bring up completely relevant. Jupiter's Legacy. Netflix spent $200 million on this show, 8 episodes. It came out 3 weeks ago. It's already been cancelled, and it's on and people are talking about it not because they watched it, because Netflix spent $200 million on a show that no one speaks about to get cancelled. This is how you have your shows. You market them properly, you do them weekly, and people get to have that sense of adventure across the week. I'd have loved to have got all the episodes together, had a great day, but I don't get to chat theories. I don't get to message my thoughts or think across like what could happen, what is going to happen. So my sort of side tangent, aside from it being a very interesting opening episodes, the weekly formula I'm so in for. Keep it coming.
Yeah, and I think, Loki's a household name now at this point, as I mentioned, isn't it? So just prepare your Facebook news feeds on Wednesday morning when the memes start coming in and the heart eye emojis are like tagged with watching Loki. It's going to happen. I'm prepared for it. If I was going to throw out sort of like one negative at the moment, and I'm not like completely down on this show, it's just sort of like the visuals with how it looks. I love the concept of it. The whole, oh god, what's it called? What are the time people? TVA. The TVA. I love the concept of it and how cosmic it is and just how weird and out there it is. And especially after seeing trailers for like the Eternals and where Marvel's heading to, I think it's going to get even more weirder and wacky. And I embrace that. I love that they're doing that with it. But apart from one very nice establishing shot of this very sci-fi futuristic environment of what it looks like outside, it's very low lit offices. It's very kind of dark and dreary visuals. So it doesn't look particularly nice from like a cinematography standpoint. I was actually looking at the cinematographer, Autumn Durald, I think her name is. She actually started a career in music videos, and this is her first TV show that she's done. She's done a few sort of like smaller feature films, but this is her first TV show. I hope the visuals get a little bit more impressive as it goes on, because as weird as the concept is, it feels like you're watching, scenes from like The Matrix when Neo's in his office. It's like this very sort of like dreary filter, filing cabinets, very, desk job kind of things. And I guess it makes it more accessible. This is a very out there idea and could completely sort of like tear your mind apart the more you try and think about timelines and alternate timelines and everything like that and erasing timelines. If you did go completely wacky and out there, I think maybe audiences would struggle to get to grips with it. Whereas if you do kind of strip it down to a very simple setting of an office, of, you know, like a hierarchical job, you've kind of got like your police chief boss behind the desk who's kind of barking orders at them. I want your badge on my desk, Foley kind of aspect to it. So it's got familiar elements like that, and obviously kind of like the buddy cop dynamic with Owen Wilson's character and Tom Hiddleston. But I don't know, for something like this, I was expecting something a bit more visual, kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy, I suppose, where it is very visual and sci-fi and wacky. This, I don't know, feels a little bit mundane at the moment. I don't know if that's meant to be the point of it, so we'll have to see how it progresses as a show. But I think that's probably the only negative that I would throw out there at the moment.
Yeah, as you said, it's that familiarity. I think my sort of prediction, obviously we're not doing spoilers, mine is that things are going to turn upside down, and I think this might be some intentional, as you said, dreary office environment. I'm very intrigued to see what happens, because I think it seems too intentional. It seems too familiar to everyone watching at home that works in offices, that it's got this grand production design in such a familiar environment. So I'm very, very curious to see if they've got plans for this. But yeah, no, I completely understand that. I think that wraps up everything I can add about this.
Yeah, that's all we can say, really.
Because I'm scared, but no. So as I said, finally, you know, we're both in, and this is the one of the three that I think we were both worried about, and I think that's the most important thing. When you're worried about something and you're proven wrong, once again, Kevin Feige proves me wrong. He's always right. He is 100 steps ahead. God knows what he's already planning long term, but Loki is involved with that, no doubts.
Mm-hmm. I think we've got to be involved, haven't we? I think that's the thing now. We had this conversation when WandaVision first started, like, will these be sort of like supplementary shows, or are they actually required viewing? Well, I think it's fair to say now they are absolutely required viewing now before we get to the films. And that's fine, because they're weekly, it's very manageable, and especially with like the whole
they're not sure
situation. Yeah, exactly. I think especially WandaVision, for a lot of people, it was nice to get back to Marvel in some way, shape or form with characters that they know. And everyone knows Loki, and everyone loves Loki. So I think this one's going to go over quite well with a lot of people, I think. That's all we can talk about it. But we will be back tomorrow, though, for our thoughts on Loki Episode 1. This was kind of like a general overview of the first two episodes, but we're going to be going into so much detail on Episode 1 tomorrow, and of course next week. This is going to be our new show for the next sort of like 6 weeks, really, our spoiler discussions. That's going to be every Wednesday on the 9th of June. Disney did shift the day. We used to do these on Friday, obviously with the show coming out now on Wednesday. It's going to be Wednesday at 8 p.m. GMT every single week. But right after this goes up in a few hours time, 3 hours time, or like, well, probably 2.5 hours time now at this point, we'll be going live for our Live and Let Die review. So continuing on with the James Bond reviews, those are going to be really good fun, and that's going to be a great discussion as well. As of this recording, I still haven't seen the movie, but by tomorrow when this goes up, I will have seen the movie, and we'll be preparing for that review. So hopefully see some of you guys there, and until the next video, we'll see you guys next time. Take care, everyone.